Hello everyone, this is TheNelston. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm here with a follow-up to my previous video regarding travel and why I believe it is one of the most overlooked and kind of unbalanced systems in Wynncraft currently, and why I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't going to be changed at all, or really in any significant capacity, for the 2.0 update. Now, to be clear, I wasn't really expecting the video to be as controversial as it turned out to be. This response video is very impromptu. I don't have a script for it. I didn't consult anyone for it. I'm literally just riffing as I go. So hopefully that should give you an idea of just how kind of interesting this discussion that has been spawned is. So to reiterate the point of the last video, it wasn't so much as to provide specific solutions for the issues that I pointed out, but rather more so to kind of get the conversation started and at least get the ball rolling on the community thinking about travel and how it's done in Wynncraft right now. So a lot of criticisms I saw of my video focused very heavily on the specific numbers, like for example 5-minute cooldowns and 1000 block radii and all that stuff. I just want to be clear, I'm not like married or attached to any of those numbers. I just threw them out there so that there was at least an idea, so you guys can kind of like put a number to the concept, if you will. But really, I didn't intend to set those as hard and fast rules. If the range was 3,000, 4,000 blocks, I wouldn't really care. If the cooldown was like 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, I don't really care either. The idea wasn't to give you specific numbers, it was just to give you the idea and the general concept. With that being said, however, in this video, I do intend to give more concrete examples of specific solutions. And also, I want to make sure to take some extra time to kind of address some of the more common non-specific critiques, or non-numeric critiques, I should say, and defend my viewpoint a little bit more. Because I still stand by two major points from the last video. Number one, scrolls are a really unfine-tuned system right now, or should I just say not fine-tuned? I don't know. And the second point that I want to reinforce is that I fully believe that the fast travel system we have right now is just not as extensive as it could or even should be. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into this video and kind of dissect the critiques as well as provide new ideas. So starting with the scrolls point, I want to just kind of say it again. I believe that scrolls are not in a good place right now. So a lot of you mentioned how scrolls are optional, how you can kind of walk around and you don't really need the scrolls, right? Like, who cares? And the other point that I saw a lot was the idea that scrolls provide this level of convenience that really should just not be taken away. Like, we've grown so used to this convenience, and so we may as well just keep it. Now, regarding the first point, I definitely agree. Scrolls are 100% optional. Hell, I even find myself sometimes walking, across large distances even. But I just think the matter is kind of divorced from that critique. You know what I mean? Like, those two things can be mutually true. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Scrolls can be completely optional, and yet at the same time, they can also be very unbalanced. And the reason I say they're unbalanced is because, as I mentioned before, the cost for scroll usage is static, meaning no matter where you use a scroll from, the cost for using it will be the exact same, i.e. the emerald cost plus the soul point cost. And this is something that just didn't really sit well with me. I understand, a lot of other games, for example like RuneScape, have static teleport costs. If you look at the runes required to TP to different towns, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I don't believe that's a good system to have. I just don't really, like that system. And so that's why I proposed a scaling cost system. And I'm just going to flesh it out a little bit here more. Basically what I'm envisioning is, well, first off, I just want to get rid of like all the different scrolls for all the different cities. I think it just adds way too much unnecessary clutter, especially for some of the smaller cities, like the very unfortunately named Bussy or Busey. I don't know how to pronounce it. But, you know, like there are so many little small towns like Jelliboard, Busey, you know, just these little places that you don't often go to, but they still have a teleport scroll, and sometimes you might want to use one. And so I propose, first off, getting rid of all of these teleport scrolls and just giving every player, like, I don't know, a teleport rock or a teleport, you know, blank teleport scroll or whatever lore-friendly equivalent there is. Then the player can choose which destination they want to go to, and then depending on how far they are and other parameters, such as how high level the city is and all that kind of jazz, they could just, you know, contribute X amount of emeralds and X amount of either soul points, or I would honestly propose a new system that is essentially the same thing as soul points, but is kind of separate so that it doesn't eat into your soul points and potentially cause noobs to kind of lose track of how many soul points they have, and then they die and they lose all their stuff. And as I mentioned before, I don't like the soul point system and I want to get rid of it, so I'd like to have an alternative regardless. But back to the point, basically what you do is you would choose where you want to go, you'd pay the requisite cost, and then there would be a cast time that is also proportional to how far you're traveling. And, you know, I don't have numbers for this, but just, you know, keep in mind the idea that the farther you go, the more things should cost. And, you know, you pretty much get the gist of the idea. Another thing I'd like to add in relation to this system is that I think the cost on teleporting should actually go up as you level. Because in early game, fast travel is extremely important since, you know, you don't have many options. For example, you only get a brown horse at level 13, you don't even get your mobility spell until level 11, and even when you do get it, you barely have enough mana to sustainably use it for more than a few dozen blocks at a time. So this way, lower level players would still have access to the cheap scrolls that you see are available with places like Deathless, Ragni, Tempo Town, Nemract, and so on and so forth, while still also preserving the idea of making it so that scrolls, or, well, I should say fast teleport to cities in general, is a little less easy. With regards to my second point on scrolls, which is that they should be changed because they're too convenient right now, I know a lot of people are saying, hey, you know, these scrolls and their convenience are really important to me, and I just don't think it should be changed because they're so nice to use. And I think I addressed this already in my previous video, but the fact that something is good for the player doesn't always mean it's going to be the best for the overall health of the game. For example, we shouldn't just make mythics drop from every single dungeon every single time, as fun as that would be, because that just takes away from the idea that mythics should be this kind of rare, really powerful end game item. So that's just kind of an example, and also why I don't really buy that argument as much as I do the first. The next point that I wanted to make in this video is that fast travels are not nearly numerous enough in the world of Wynncraft, nor do I believe that the existing systems are nearly as extensive as they should be, with the exception of certain ones like the Sea Skipper. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about every single fast travel in the game and then draw out which points they connect on the map, and then you guys will kind of see what I mean by when I say that there aren't really enough fast travels, because you'll start to notice that there are some areas that just don't really seem to be serviced. So starting off, we have the Ragley Detonus Tunnel, and this is, you know, as the name suggests, a tunnel which takes you from Ragni to Deathless. Then we have the Nivla Savannah Tunnel, and this takes you from the lava pits a little bit northeast of Deathless all the way to the Spider Dungeon, or, well, the Infested Pit. Then we have the VSS Sea Skipper, which is, well, as we all know and love him as the Sea Skipper. And I don't really want to draw out the connection points here because there's so many of them, but for the sake of illustration, here they are. Then we have the Mesa Elevators, which I don't really count as a fast travel because they mostly take you in a vertical direction, and they're all kind of isolated to the specific region of Rhymek. So we're just going to gloss over that. Then we have the Passage, which is an alternative route from the Pigman Ravines all the way down to Troms, so you don't have to run across the Great Bridge every time. Then we have the Nexus, which is basically like a replacement for the Sea Skipper. It takes you around to certain spots that the Sea Skipper would also take you to, but of course at the cost of completely free. And the downside though is that the access points are a little bit out of the way. I'm not going to draw the access points specifically because that's way too much work. Then we have Kalos airship, I don't know how to pronounce that. But that is, of course, the airship that takes you from Sinfris to Deathless and vice versa. Then we have the Juggler's Tavern, which is kind of a weird system, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm not sure how it ties into the lore, but regardless, it is in the game, so we're going to talk about it. And this takes you to a couple of different cities distributed across Gavel. This is definitely one of the better fast travels in my opinion, but it kind of also feels a little bit cheaty. Then we of course have the CSS Wavebreaker, which is the boat that takes you from Selchar to Korkus. Then we have the Hot Air Balloon, which takes you from Kandon Beta to Korkus and vice versa. Then we have the Eltom Thesiad Tunnel, which, as the name obviously suggests, takes you from Eltom to Thesiad. Then we have the Molten Heights Elevators, which, similar to the Mesa Elevators, does not really service like a lot of areas. Then we have the Dwarven Trading Tunnel, which is going to take you from Thanos to Rodorok. And then we have the Colossus Tunnel, which takes you from Kandon Beta to the TCC Raid. Then we have the Void Elevators, and these are similar to the Molten Heights and Mesa Elevators in the sense that they only service one primary direction, which is up, or I guess down. And this is also the only way to access the quote-unquote Void. So I'm not really going to talk about this either because it is such a unique fast travel in that it is an access point for an entire region of the game, which by the way is so criminally underutilized, but that's a whole separate matter. Void holes are next, and these are also not going to be mentioned much because they only really take you around Void Valley, which is not a particularly large piece of land. And then finally, we have the Dern Portal to Lutho. And this is honestly more for like the convenience of people doing a Hunter's Calling. And I will count it as a fast travel technically, since I guess you can use it to kind of go back from the Eldritch Outlook to Lutho a little bit quicker. But again, I don't really see this as a major kind of fast travel. And thus, we have a complete map of every single major fast travel in Wynncraft. Keep in mind, I left some of the smaller ones out. For example, some people have pointed out how you can go from around Jofash Docks and Dead Island all the way down to the abandoned mines near Deathless. And technically that kind of works as a fast travel, but I'm not really going to consider it here since it was not marked on the wiki. With that all being said, let's talk about some of the regions that are currently not serviced that I really think should get some sort of fast travel due to either continuity or efficiency reasons. Starting off, we're going to be talking about the desert area, so that's Almuj and Rhymek. And the reason that I think there should be a fast travel at the very least to Almuj is because it just makes sure that all of the Wynn province is consistent. So what do I mean by this? Well, the answer is because every other major town in the Wynn province has some sort of fast travel connection to it. For example, Ragni and Detless have their own little tunnel. Nemract has the Nivla Savannah tunnel, which takes you very close. Nasak has the Sea Skipper that you can take from Nemract all the way down. Troms has the Great Passage. So really, it's just Almuj that doesn't have a significant connection. And I'm just leaving out Lutho for now, since I'll get to that later. Yeah, that's kind of the reason why I want to make sure that there's some sort of fast travel to it. As I mentioned before in the previous video, I think some sort of caravan system between Detless and Almuj would be really cool and in lore. And I think that while it is true that Detless and Almuj are only a few hundred blocks apart, and thus they don't need a fast travel since you can just walk there, if every other major city in the Wynn province is getting a fast travel, I think it's really only fair that Almuj is also connected, because the desert region is, well, pretty significant. So I definitely think there should be some sort of connection point there. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Lost Sanctuary and Tempo Town region. The problem here is that every other dungeon in the game is located either immediately next to a fast travel or is only a few dozen to a few hundred blocks away from a city which can be fast traveled to. And remember, our criteria here is that we're not really going to be talking much about scrolls because they kind of just break everything right now. But if we're just talking about fast travels, right? Lost Sanctuary is the only dungeon in the game that doesn't have easy access, whether that's from a fast travel or from anything else. And honestly, this is kind of annoying because Lost Sanctuary is a level 20-something dungeon, meaning your horse is probably not very high level, you don't have the mana to sustain mobility spells, and it's just so out of the way that it's really inconvenient to get to, and you have to use scrolls, essentially, if you want to get there, right? You have to scroll to Tempo Town and then walk up there, and then even then, the walk from Tempo Town to the Lost Sanctuary is a little bit annoying. It's just such an out of the way and weird dungeon that it's really no surprise that so few people actually go out of their way to complete the dungeon. I was talking to a lot of other people during the double XP weekend when we were grinding at Scrap, and frequently I heard people say like, oh yeah, I just don't do the Lost Sanctuary dungeon because there's no point. It's so hard to get to, and the rewards it offers are just questionable at best, except for the gathering tools. So my idea would be pretty simple. Similar to the Detless Almuj caravan, we could have some sort of trading caravan maybe that you can hitch a ride on, or maybe, I don't know, some kind of like portal, since there's so much magic surrounding Tempo Town and the Time Valley region as a whole. So yeah, those are kind of my 2 cents on that. Finally, of course, I'm going to be talking about the Silent Expanse in Wynn province. And I feel like this deserves a fast travel primarily because right now the current route is just so boring. Like, yeah, you can just run it, but it's not dangerous whatsoever. If you think about, for example, the Great Bridge between Nasak and Troms, like that's dangerous. You know, every time you go there, that's something you have to worry about until much later. So I feel like that if we made Silent Expanse a little bit more challenging in the vein of the Great Bridge, then it would be a lot more fun and it would be justifiable to not have a fast travel to Lutho. The problem though is, of course, that right now I can run straight from Detless to Lutho without any armor, without any defense, without any agility, without anything that buffs my movement speed, horses, anything like that. I could run with nothing on and I would be completely fine. I might not even take a single hit from any mob. And that's a problem. The highest level region in the game, and you can just run there with nothing. You can just like play with your monitor off. That's concerning, honestly. So yeah, either make it so the travel path is much, much, much harder than it is now, or add a fast travel and gate that behind a difficult quest. Either way, I think both honestly don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think both should be changes that are made. But yeah, definitely please make the Silent Expanse path much harder than it is now. Next, we're going to go ahead and move on to the Gavel province. Now, I'm specifically skipping Corcus because I feel like right now it is not a fleshed out region. The only real points of interest there are Corcus City and the Avos territory. And I mean, I can see why there's no fast travel between the two of those things. So yeah, I'm just not going to talk about Corcus. But moving on to Gavel, I think my primary concern here is the fact that Sinfris and Levigar are not connected whatsoever. Like, Sinfris and Levigar are the two major villager settlements in Gavel, and you're telling me that there's no connection between the two? I mean, if you look at the map, the roads that lead from Levigar to Sinfris are these like beat down dirt paths. And that just doesn't make sense to me. Is there no trade going on between these two cities? Is there no envoys traveling between them that carry information and governance stuff? Like, what's going on here? Are they just completely separated? I don't think so. I don't think that makes much sense to me. And I also believe that this is a great time to expand on the Letvis Air Base and make it so it doesn't just serve as a point of connection between Detless and Sinfris. I think it'd be really cool if we had airships leaving from Letvis Air Base, traveling to Levigar, and vice versa. Like, I just think that's something that makes sense, and I'm a little perplexed as to why there isn't a fast travel like it in the game yet. If airships are maybe a little bit too overpowered for whatever reason, even just having a land route like a caravan system would be cool too. I just think it makes no sense that Sinfris and Levigar are so far apart without any connection points. That's just a little weird. And finally, I would like to talk very briefly about the swamp and Candor areas. I understand that from a lore perspective, the governments of Sinfris and Levigar and just the villager, like the rich villager cities as a whole, decided that they would just let the area rot and not help them at all. But I still think it'd be kind of neat if there were some way that maybe there's some individuals who run some sort of trading route and you can hitch a ride on a cart there or anything like that, right? Because I don't think that everybody in Gavel is apathetic to the plights of the Swamp and Candor region. Like, I think that's not something that everyone is so careless about. So I think it'd be cool if there were like concerned citizen routes or whatever, like aid routes, you know, and you can hitch a ride on those supply carts. But even apart from that, I think if we could extend the river here, and I know it doesn't flow seaward, so fine, but I think it'd be cool if we had some sort of way of making the Sea Skipper able to travel down a river and drop you off in the middle of the Candor or swamp region, because that would just make it so that there's a little bit more to do with the Sea Skipper and Gavel, because right now it feels like he doesn't really do much. He kind of just takes you to Levigar, and that's it. There's nothing else that he services in Gavel apart from the Jofash docks, taking you to different points of interest across the ocean. So yeah, I just think it'd be neat, but honestly, I'm not married to the idea. I understand why there wouldn't be fast travels, but it just seems kind of empty, you know, like look at all these lines. There's just nothing there. It feels so sad and lonely. And with all of that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about this video. There was a lot of rambling and a lot of very specific details here, but I hope I was able to convince at least some of you who were originally against my ideas in the previous video to kind of understand my viewpoint a little bit better regarding why I think there should be more fast travels and why I think scrolls should be nerfed, and more specifically, how I think the scrolls should be nerfed or reworked. Apart from that though, of course, I don't really have much else to say, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like. If you hated it, leave a dislike. Make sure to discuss your thoughts about this new video in the comment section below, as well as on my Discord, which is both linked at the start of this video and also in my comments and description section. Just, you know, engage with this because I really do want to hear more of your guys' thoughts. In fact, it was community opinions that really helped me kind of solidify my views and iron them out a little bit more. So keep it up, guys. I really do appreciate it. I will see you all in the next video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.